Good morning. Welcome to Sacred Enzyme. I'm Stacy. So we're back for part 2 on the story of Thomas Jefferson's starship. I was just thinking about when I was naming the I was trying to name the video. I just kept thinking about Jefferson's starship, the old hippie band. And I was thinking maybe that's where they got the name from, because they heard about the account of Thomas Jefferson talking about UFOs, because this account actually he took to the society. He wasn't a Mason, and I think that he was aware of the ancestry of the family somehow or another, being tied with Nephilims. I'm not joking, because they all went to the mystery schools. This is why Thomas Jefferson was rewriting the Bible and stuff. He was like uber smart. He spent all day long in his office reading. And basically, I guess he was just a man of leisure. They'd leave him alone in his office and not bother him all day. I'm thinking, what kind of crap is that? Get off your butt. You never get away with that now. Never. I mean, kids back then, they just had to be so proper. And it's funny how when you live in the South, how proper everybody is here, even now. It's like if you have friends or family members that are older, it's respectful to send cards still. Most people don't do that. But, I think it's beautiful. I think it's very nice when people are personal and they still write letters. And, they still make things. And I'm a big recycler, as you can tell from my office. Everything is vintage. Nothing in my house is brand new. There's very few things in my whole house that are brand new. Everything is recycled. I believe in recycling, and the older stuff is better anyway. So Thomas Jefferson, he was a real serious man. So if he took this serious, he did have an account that came to him that he never answered. But when I read the account, and I was thinking, okay, this is interesting, because if you really think about what they're saying in the account, it makes complete sense. And we'll go over that account. So Thomas Jefferson, to get on with the story, Thomas Jefferson had several expeditions going on, okay? And so this might just lead into a whole series about Merriweather Lewis, because I sent an email a long time ago to this author that wrote a book about the fact that Jesse James wasn't killed in the way that history denotes it, that he lived to a very old age. And see, this is a story I'm going to share, because there was more to the whole thing with Jesse James. And maybe one day we'll really find out what it was, but there were a lot of people that were behind him. And my great-grandmother, Emma Jane Randolph, she told my dad that when she was a kid, and she was born in the 1800s, or was it? Yeah, 1800s, the late 1800s, I believe. I'll have to go and get her exact date of birth. But anyway, she was alive during the time when he was supposedly dead, okay? And she said that he used to bring his horses. He was really funny. Apparently, he was like really funny about his horse. He had like the special horse. And you have to remember that during the time they did everything like on horseback, okay? So if you're like running a long way away from people, you're running on the back of a horse. And that animal eventually has to stop and rest. So the way that I understand it is that he would bring his horses, and my great-great-grandfather, who was a Randolph, they would hide his horses in the woods behind their house and give him fresh horses, and he would take fresh horses. And matter of fact, when I was doing my genealogy, there is a Randolph family member that has a baby that's a James. And from the way that I've kind of understood it from working on my genealogy for so long, that the breadcrumbs is that she actually had a baby not with Jesse James, so with his brother Frank. He had his brother they did everything together, kind of like my brothers Brian and Kevin. They did everything together, but Frank and Jesse did everything together, including this work. And I don't know if they were working for a shadow government, CIA or whatever, and this is why they had their deaths were faked. I definitely think it had something to do with the government, because and it's way deeper than what we think. Because if my family was hiding him out, you know, this was like a cause. You know, this was something way deeper. And, you know, there's one thing that I have run across that since I've been reading a lot of the personal letters of Thomas Jefferson and Patsy and other family members, is that, you know, there was always a threat at that time. There was a lot of undercurrent of stuff, secret societies beyond the secret societies. You know, and there was a time that right after Martha had their last baby, they had to go like in hiding because somebody tried to assassinate him. They wanted to kill him. This was right, you know, right around the time of the Revolution. And so they had to go into hiding. And it put so much stress on Martha that this is one of the reasons that you know, Patsy thinks that her mother died, was because she had just had this baby and she hadn't had a chance to like bounce back from it. And so you have to remember, these are all home births, you know. And I don't know about back then, but I know that the family members have like enormous babies. My oldest brother was almost 11 pounds. He was huge, and his kids were enormous too, like 10 and 11 pound kids. And these kids were really long too. Like I heard the horror stories of my great aunt and my grandmother trying to help her birth her kids, who were ginormous, that she would be given home births straddling kitchen chairs to get these huge kids out. I mean, can you imagine the women having to birth giants? How did they do that? I mean, those babies were some big babies. I mean, if, you know, all these years later, you know, my family's having 11-pound kids, 10 pounds, almost 11-pound kids. I can only imagine those babies were probably like 20 pounds. Holy smokes, those women, no wonder you couldn't survive that. But, you know, Martha Jefferson, you know, she was in a weak state after she had that home delivery. And you have to ride around in a wagon on horses. Could you imagine being stuck on a wagon after you just had a baby, having to ride a horse? Could you even believe it? So yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on even then, a lot of undercurrents, and it's really interesting reading it. I think everybody should go back. You can read like all his letters on the Library of Congress. They're all there. You can go to Internet Archive. I mean, they're everywhere. It's really interesting, and he has really nice handwriting. So, you know, it's not like some of these letters that you can even hardly read because the handwriting's so bad, but he does have really good handwriting, so you can read a lot of his stuff. So this UFO crashed in the Gulf of Mexico. And we've talked about there being a Stargate. There's multiple Stargates actually in the Gulf, because you've got Mexico, you've also got Bermuda, right? Because, you know, that was all Atlantean technology there. And then Sarasota, right off of the coast, Siesta Key, you know, where all these hurricanes keep hitting. So, you know, you've got a lot of extraterrestrial crafts that are in these areas because they're going through these places on the planet. This is what we're here for. We're here to be maintaining the energies to these planetary portals and, you know, these stargates that are all over the planet. So this UFO sighting, this UFO crashed in the Gulf, or by the Gulf. They heard it going over the treetops and just destroying the forest. They said it was just unbelievable. And then it hit. And it was like an earthquake, they said. It was so intense. So it says, I have been informed that search has been made in the place where the burning body fell. So it was on fire. and they seen it, okay? So, and that a considerable portion of the surface of the earth was found broken up, and every vegetable body burned or greatly scorched. I have not yet received answers to a number of queries I have sent on, which may perhaps bring to light more particulars. So, Jefferson was fascinated about this whole thing, and so he was looking for this. He was looking for this. And you know, the Merriweather Lewis, the Lewises are related to the Randolphs. There's many, if you want to know if any famous person is related to the Randolph family, all you got to do is go back through like one of these genealogy sources that have the whole family mapped out. And they will name every single kid after somebody. I mean, they are so funny about that. There are so many Nancys, so many Janes, so many Johns. I mean, Thomases. My cousin's name was Thomas. Matter of fact, I just saw him at Publix. But I mean, they have so many, they use the same names. My grandma's name was Jane. Her name was Emma Jane. Her sister's name was Nancy Jane. Because, you know, we had a lot of famous Jane Randolphs in the family. But I mean, there were so many people that were named Lewis. And there were Merriweather. It was all in our family. And then if you go back, you'll find where Merriweather Lewis's family and the Randolph family intersect. They're in the family. And so Merriweather Lewis was a confidant of Thomas. And when he went on this expedition, you know, it was more than just an expedition. They were looking for stuff. And then, you know, I do not believe for 1 second that Merriweather Lewis killed himself. There's no doubt about it that he was murdered. There's no doubt about it. I feel very strongly that he was murdered. And that whole thing needs to be taken apart, and they need to go talk to family members that have access to knowledge that's not public, because there's lots of these old families that keep these letters, and they have word to mouth where they tell their family member stories, because, you know, there's a lot to be told about this. And just like my family was letting Jesse James and Frank James hide out there, hide their horses there, rest their horses there, and get on, because there was a favorite horse that Jesse liked to ride. I can't remember what the name of it is. I've heard it said, but I'd have to go and look at his legends. I haven't really studied a lot about it, but I really want to. And I want to study more about Merriweather Lewis, because I really feel like there's a whole lot more to unlock about these stories. We need to completely undo our entire history narrative. I have somebody that leaves books for me at the library in the used book section. And I kid you not, it's everything that we talk about on this channel. No kidding. It's about genetics. It's about history. It's about religion. I mean, it's about everything. It's about angels. It's about old architecture. It's about, I mean, I got this incredible 4-volume set on history. And I got this beautiful old set on Abraham Lincoln, a 2-volume set, and it's in the original cardboard case. I have to show it to you. But I want to go through all this stuff. But somebody leaves these books for me at the library, and I go, you know, every couple weeks, and I get a whole stack of, I have gotten some beautiful, amazing old books, and I'm so grateful. But, you know, we're going to take all this history stuff apart, because, you know, we got to find out what happened in the past so we don't make these mistakes again in the future. And, you know, there's red herrings through, I just got a thump in my watch. There's red herrings all throughout history of all of these situations that you see that are alluding and leading up to an event. And if they would have just stopped and said, you know, what are we doing here? They could have prevented it from happening, or not, you know, not doing it. And see, this is why I think that we are from the future, and that we've come back here for this golden age. That's why there's so many people here on this planet, that we came back here to redo it, because Everything is in a circle, right? We're on a circle. This is why it's the dragon eating its tail. It's because everything goes around in a circle, in a cycle. So we're coming back right to where we started, right? It totally makes sense that we've traveled back in time, that maybe we're just traveling back in time, right? Think about it. Really, seriously think about it. So Thomas Jefferson was looking for this UFO, and he wanted, it says here that Thomas Jefferson asked Dunbar and George Hunter, and Dunbar was the one that seen the UFO. Dunbar and George Hunter to lead an expedition that aimed to trace the Arkansas and Red Rivers to their sources. Thomas wanted to know as much as he could about the real estate he'd just purchased. But after hearing reports about a violent group of Osage Indians stationed along their planned route, Dunbar and Hunter ultimately had to dramatically scale back their ambitious plans, which Kelby Otchley of 64 parishes described as comparable in scope to the Lewis and Clark expedition. Instead, the two men explored the Ochita River, where they never quite figured out how to correctly spell, and which unfortunately turned up no additional evidence of extraterrestrial life. So, I mean, I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, really, I mean, they had UFOs that were on right then, back then. You know, they had sightings back then that were written all throughout our history. And then let me read you this one that's oh, here we go. I was gonna say the link didn't come up. I sent it to myself when I was reading about this stuff. I was like, oh man, I have to send this to my computer. Okay, so this happened in Baltimore. And Thomas Jefferson used to go to Maryland all the time. He went to Philadelphia all the time. He traveled all throughout these capitals, and there were family members that were, I don't know if there was any Randolphs that were living in Maryland, but I'm sure that there were. But, you know, he traveled to all these different places. He even came, I'm pretty sure that he even came to Florida. Because the Lees, Robert E. Lee, they have a house in Arcadia, which I thought, oh, this is really interesting, because Arcadia is one of these places that they talk about in these other dimensions of reality, of Arcadia. And interestingly enough, that was the first place that I went to when I was looking for proof that Atlantis was here in the past, was Arcadia. And lo and behold, I don't even know why I picked Arcadia, because Arcadia, there's really nothing phenomenal about Arcadia if you live in Florida. You know, it's just a little podunk town. So I went there, and I just went there with my new eyes, right? And I went downtown, and there was this huge pink building that took up a whole city block. And I filmed it. It had an alcove that went inside. It had all kind of wrought iron. It had all kind of integral stuff in the architecture. I put it on the shorts. And I filmed it that day, and I put it on my thing. And as I started reading more and more about Atlantis and studying symbols and stuff, I started going back and looking at these buildings that I'd visited, right? Now that I've had these activations, I went back and looked at that pink building, and I realized that all across the building is one trident after another. It's Atlantis. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then down in Frostproof, the city hall down there, it has all of these carvings that are in the architecture, right? They're dragons. And they're like these seraphim all in the building. I'm like, no way. In Frostproof. Atlantis was totally in Central Florida. I'm telling you, you can take 60 right across the state, and it's called Hesperides. If you go to St. Augustine, I'm telling you, Washington Oaks Park, that is a naga, a fossilized naga in the middle of that park. That area is a sacred spot. It is sacred. It is on the planetary grids. It's a sacred spot. No joke, no joke. So this tavern keeper, he sees a UFO in Baltimore. Oh no, actually, he was a visitor from Baltimore. He's seen it in Virginia. My bad. So what his account was is that he saw a ball that looked like fire, just like the other guy said, right? And see, when he got this account, he didn't take it, Thomas Jefferson didn't take it serious until he got the second account. Then he took it serious, okay? He said it was as big as the sun at meridian, okay? We're talking big here. At meridian, really? Which was frequently obscured within the space of 10 minutes by a smoke emitted from its own body, which sounds to me like kind of like plasma, right? Okay, so maybe it was in between dimensions and it had a plasma look to it. Okay, so it says which from the smoke that emitted from its body, but ultimately retained its brilliancy and form during that period, but with apparent agitation. So it seems like this thing was maybe like flickering, because they described it as agitated. So I'm thinking that it means like erratic, or it was flickering. So I'm thinking that this thing was appearing, manifesting in this time dimension, the space, and it was having a problem maybe with its cloaking, okay? So it says that it then assumed the form, okay? It didn't say that it turned into. It says it assumed the form of a turtle, which seemed to be much agitated. So let's think about a turtle. A turtle is a circle with 5, right? A head and arms. So if it's appearing agitated, it's going out, right? Out and in. It's moving erratically, right? Like this. They thought it looked like a turtle, okay? So then it says, and it was frequently obscured by a similar smoke. It descended obliquely to the west and raised again perpendicular to its original height, which was on or about 75 degrees. Then it assumed the shape of a human skeleton. Okay, so then it like stretched out, right? Instead of looking like a turtle, it stretched out and looked like a skeleton. So now we're getting kind of like a light beam, effect with the shape on the top. And it's almost like those inscriptions that are carved into those petroglyphs, right? That show those beings that have their arms out like this and their legs out like this, and they kind of think that these look like plasma vortices or something like that. So maybe that's kind of like what it looks like when these stargates are opening. Who knows, right? So then it says, it then assumed the form of a Scotch Highlander arrayed for battle. Just like those petroglyphs, right? It's stance, right? So then it shot out. It went this way, and then it went this way. Okay? Extremely agitated. So it, like this. And then ultimately passed to the west and disappeared in its own smoke. We're honorable, sir, with sentiments of very high respect and esteem. These people are saying, we are not kidding and we are not lying. And so Thomas Jefferson never responded to this. So it did say that in an unidentified hand signed by Hansford and Clark at head of text, Thomas Jefferson addressed Thomas Jefferson Esquire, Monticello, Virginia, postmarked August 26th, endorsed by TJ as received 14 September 1813. So let's see, 9 and 5 is 14, 5, 9, 10, 12, 3, 5, 8. So that was on an 8-day, 8 numerology day. Usually these come out on interesting days when you look at numerology. So, I don't know. I just think that it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting that they were having UFO sightings in the 1800s, And Thomas Jefferson did talk about something that every so many hundred years that a government will try to overthrow its leaders. Didn't he say that? It's like every 200 years? you know, stuff does run in cycles. He already knew that. He already knew about the time cycles. So, and then, you know, there's rumors about Mount Rushmore already being carved. So if we were time travelers, that totally makes sense why it was, that guy didn't really carve that, because it was already carved there, right? Because we're coming from the future into the past to redo everything. So we already been through this one time. So the question is when did the future change? Right? Interesting to think about. When did we come back from the future? When did we get here? It's interesting to think about. So let me tell you about the second experience that I had. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, went outside, looked up in the sky. See the same thing. See this orb up there. I'm like, wow. And it was flashing. And now I think that it was actually giving me light code downloads. Because I was standing there watching it, and I was like, whoa. And I'm talking, and I'm like, hello, can you see me? Can you hear me? And it's like flashing, you know, different flash sequences. It looked like almost like Morse code. And so I was like, okay, I'm going in the house to get my phone because I've got to record this because nobody will believe me. I'm always trying to get proof because, you know, if people do not see, they will not believe this. And, you know, people think you're crazy when you experience these things. So I'm always trying to get proof. So I run in the house, get my phone. I go out there. I turn it on. I catch it. It's blinking, right? And literally, I'm looking at it with my eyes. I'm holding my phone. I'm watching it. And then I glance down to my phone, and it's not showing up on my phone anymore. And I'm like, what the heck? How is it that I'm looking at this and it's not showing up on my viewfinder? So then I'm thinking, oh, it'll probably show up when I play it back. So then it disappeared. Then it disappeared. So then I was just like, oh, well, you know. So I let it run for a second longer, and it didn't come back. So then I go back inside, and I put my glasses on, and I'm replaying it, and I see it vanish from the screen. They must have some kind of way that they can cloak your devices, because if they don't want you recording it, then they won't let you record it. Seriously. But I did catch it before it stopped me. So I was glad that I got like a little second of it. So you can go back and watch that video. I caught it, and you have to look quick because, I mean, it was like no time at all that as soon as I started recording, it cut that right off. And I thought that was funny. I was like, because, you know, I was watching it a second longer with my eyes, but my phone was not recording it. So, I mean, that's pretty interesting. But I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep looking. I am determined to get a telescope. And the interesting thing is I've asked the universe to give me a telescope. And Christmas, it was funny because my son got a telescope from his daughter-in-law, but he didn't want it, and she returned it. I was like, man, I would have bought that telescope. You know, I've been wanting one. So I just think that that's interesting. So, you know, there's been things like this happening for a long time. And, you know, they've been visiting these people all throughout time. So were these, oh, hello. Somebody's touching me on top of my head. Hello, I'm right here. Yes, I'm here. Did you guys see did my hair move? That was wild. I surely felt somebody's hand on top of my head. Well, you know, it's the bird people. They're back. They're back. This is the Raw Collective. They're touching my head again. Look and see if my hair is moving. The Raw Collective is back. The bird people are back. They're back. They're definitely back. They're back. The original. These are the original founder race. This is Ra. This is Toth. This is their collective. They are back. They're coming back. They're coming back to show the people as soon as we are able to bring our vibration up just a little bit more, because some people are already seeing them. As soon as we're able to bring our vibration up, and it's not going to take a lot. It's just going to take us just completing that little bit of shadow work and merging all our parts together and just manifesting and knowing in your mind that this is the way it's going to be. This is the way it's going to be. We are bringing in the golden age. We are here for this work. We're here for this work. This is why everybody is watching this and listening to this right now, because this is the time. Everybody's waking up. We're all waking up. People are already seeing these, and this is why they say it's going to be an alien invasion, because one day it's going to be like literally turning on the light switch and everybody can see what is out here all the time. It's like if you could see what's in the sky all the time, you would be totally freaked out. There's like all kind of stuff all around you can't even see. There's like UFOs in the sky all over the place. They told me that they're there all the time and that they cloak in clouds. That all we see is clouds. And it's literally, their ships are everywhere. And it's funny because they told me that I would know that it's definitely them. And I'm like, well, how will I know the difference between you, they're touching my head again, between you and the clouds? And they said, well, just look for two clouds that look almost just alike, like twins, is what they said, that are kind of round, and they're just side by side. They're the same size, the same shape. That's us. That's what they told me. So I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. Really cool. So we're going to think it's an alien invasion because we're going to wake up one day and the light switch is just going to be on. They're touching my head again. The light switch is going to be on, and we're just going to see this everywhere. And we're feeling like we're being invaded, but we're not. They've been here the whole time. They're just in the fourth dimension, and we haven't been able to see them because we've been in the gutter for so freaking long, and they've been waiting for us to wake up. We'll finally see Atlantean survivors. We'll finally see the Lemurians and all these people. They can come out of inner Earth because the frequency of the planet's not so low that they can't be here. And so it is the golden age, folks. We're from the outside earthers. We're from the future. We're out here doing the work. They're in here anchoring the grid in inner Earth, trying to help us. I mean, when you think about it that way, it's like wild. This is the way that it is coming to me now. In my, I guess, downloads is the only way I can say it, is downloads. I'm not doing no channeling, or I'm not a channeler. I'm not a channeler. I don't sit here and like sit and try to be tapping into all this stuff. I don't try to do that. It's just like stuff just comes to me, and it's like my higher self, or I feel like it's my family. It's like they talk to me because I'm connected to them. I'm connected to them. And we're all like connected. And you know, the kids that are being born now that have 12 to 36 active DNAs, especially these kids that are really locked up in autism. If you go, there's a woman that is a doctor, and she's doing these experiments with these autistic kids, and how they have like PK abilities, that they can see what their parents are holding across the room on a piece of paper, that they can read books, that, I mean, they can do all kind of amazing stuff. You got to look it up. It's breaking barriers. Now, if they could just connect the Keylontic part of it, where they realize that they could totally unlock these kids' codes, where they would run smoothly if they would just do some of the deprogramming on the mixed up malware that's in their body. And it could be letting them listen to these fire songs, because these fire songs is how we're communicating with source. And this is how we reprogram all of these, is these chants. This is why they did it in the old days. This is why the Native Americans dance in a circle. They're communicating with source. This is the light language from God to us. Just like when you go to some of these churches that are way out in the woods, like these really hillbilly churches, they still talk in tongues. Like some of my Randolph family, they come out of Red Bay. When you go to Alabama, you say, hey, I'm coming down to church. Everybody will come out. I mean, the Randolph, there's thousands of them, it seems like. They come out of everywhere. I don't know how they get in touch. I don't know if they're on like the collective bubble and they just let everybody know. But I mean, they come out of everywhere, and they start talking in tongues and all kind of stuff. The first time when I heard them do that, they started talking in tongues. They were talking in tongues for like a half an hour. And I was like, wow, what is this? I thought it was kind of crazy. But really, they're talking in light language. They're talking in light language. I should have paid more attention and tried to listen to, what they were saying. Because, they might have been talking in fire words, I mean, it's an interesting thing about the Randolph family and how they ended up. They ended up being like really super poor. My dad was really poor. But the very interesting thing about it is that they all knew how to read, and they knew the Bible backwards and forwards and forwards and backwards. My great grandmother, she read the Bible to everybody, all the kids, all the grandkids. So, considering that she was so poor, how was it that she knew how to read so eloquently, and how did she know scripture like forward and backwards? Unless there wasn't some education that was involved in these families. See, that was the first clue. That was one of the clues. And one of the other clues is that it's been said throughout the family that my great grandfather, who was a miller, he told my grandmother that he paid too much money for her. And I was like, what? Paid too much money for her? But now it makes sense. He was buying her jeans. Yes, he was. He was buying her jeans. They were Northwest European. Old German lines. Old German, Celtic, Hebrew. That's the Northwest European in my family line. Comes from the Millers. They're all Northwest European. And most of the name Miller is German, Old German, like Mueller. And so this is where the farming comes in the family on my dad's side. Is from his maternal grandfather. That they raised him. And those are the people. My great grandmother and my great grandfather were the two that came to me when I had my hypnosis session, and they talked to me and they told me that I was basically here. That my dad, and the other interesting thing is that I truly believe that I'm part of this bird collective because my dad's middle name is Ray. You can't make this up, and that's a family name. Like half of the kids and the grandkids have the middle name Ray. Even the girls. My niece's middle name's Ray. My nephew's middle name's Ray, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, Ray. There's Ray in the family. R-A-Y, like a ray of sun. And my dad's name is Samuel. But when I was talking, when my grandmother was talking to me in my hypnosis session, every time she would say Samuel and I was repeating it back, she kept correcting me. She kept correcting the way I was enunciating the name, almost like she was saying firewords. She was like, kept saying, no, Samuel is what she kept saying, something like that. Samuel. And I'm like, because my dad says his name is Samuel, but she totally corrected me. So it was almost like she was telling me his name was fire letters, but the middle name Ray is like Ra. It's like birds. It's like crazy. I mean, go back. It's like the proof is everywhere. And it's funny because it's like, I recognize these bird people right now. All the people that I'm working with that are doing this research at the same time, or that, that are in these same study programs that I'm in. Certain ones I can pick out, and if they have like content or whatever on YouTube, if you just happen to go back and you're reviewing some of their workshops or their seminars and their podcast, it'll be funny because you'll hear these little comments scattered throughout. Thanks for being here so early. You're such an early bird. That's one thing, which I thought was funny. And just little comments about, being a bird or early bird, or just, I mean, the truth said in jest is so funny. It's so funny. But I do believe that the bloodline of Jesus, I'm not sure if it's 9 or if it's 12, that it comes from the Ra Collective. Because we have looked at some information when we were studying earlier about Thoth a while back in one of the first videos, that he's kind of interchangeable with the whole Jesus collective. So whether it's Jesus 9 or Jesus 12, I'm not sure. Because, you know, Ashiana Dean's, her studies go in a lot into the galactic stuff. But I think that, you know, and it's important to know how all of these groups fit together and, you know, things that we did in the past that we need to correct, right? But also we have to look at it from another perspective, is that this was an experiment in polarity. And so now it's like the game's over. So we've got to clean up the pieces. You know, we got to bring everybody, we got to bring all the players in off the field. See, this is what we're doing right now. This is what we're doing. And this is why we're waking up. We're waking up to like, okay, it's time. And it's funny because I have this app on my phone that like it's called like a ghost box or something, where you hear like supposedly you can hear ghosts talking, like they can manipulate it, and you'll hear it scrolling through like a radio station. Well, I had it on the first time I ever turned it on. I turned it on one time and I never used it before, and I turned it on and I thought, I'm not going to be able to hear. I had read a video had come up on my feed and a guy said he was using this. It was called Vox, V-O-X. And I was like, oh, I'm going to check this out and see what it is. So I downloaded and I turned it on, and literally I heard first thing, Brian Kevin, which is my two brothers that are on the other side. And then I heard nothing but, it's time. It's time. It's time. Literally, like every 45 seconds, I just kept hearing, and it sounded like my one brother's voice, because he had a certain cadence to his voice, and he'd say, it's time, it's time, it's time, it's time, just over and over again, like a parrot, literally. And I was like, okay, it's time for what? What are you talking about? It's time. That's what all it said was, it's time. So I was like done with it after a while. I was tired of hearing it's time. And so the next day I turned it on. I was like, let's see if this thing even works. And literally it was this exact same thing. It's time. It's time. It's time. Over and over. So it's time. It's time. It's time for us to wake up. I mean, it's time for everything. It's time for everything, literally. I mean, they were seeing UFOs back then, so I think that it was probably their future selves coming to wake them up. And, you know, some of these experiments with these kids in these MK Ultra programs, they went back in time. As one of them says that they went back in time and talked to George Washington and told him that they were from the future. So, I mean, anything's possible. Anything's possible. I'm sure that he was from one of these bloodlines. Kids that they're putting in the future. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. I guarantee if you look at Jordan Maxwell, he probably comes from one of these old bloodlines. That's the only reason that they've tolerated him talking all the time he has, is because he's got the gene code. Betcha. That's why he's so smart, is because he has all these active DNA, the DNA template that's open. And this is where you get all these super smart people from. It's just because their family genetics, they didn't get any of these gene code frequencies that turn them upside down. You know, it caused a malware. They were lucky to escape it, honestly. They were lucky to escape it. Despite the fact that everybody was having to think for themselves. Nobody was used to thinking for themselves. Can you imagine what it was like when Atlantis fell? It was like everybody. They wouldn't know what to think, you know? Everything was being told from you from your avatar, and then all of a sudden, you were cut off. You had no idea what was going on. That'd be crazy, right? So that's the end of part 2. 44 minutes, crazy stuff here. The dogs are barking, so I'm going to save you the torture. So when you come find me, I'll be here. We're living the past, present, future, all at the same time. Get outside today. It's going to warm up. Thank God. So I hope to catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Sacred End Time. Bye-bye.